It starts as a jar of liquid silk protein and ends up strong enough to swing a grown adult between skyscrapers. This is how you'd actually build Spider-Man's web shooter. Let's get one thing straight. Spider-Man has no web glands anywhere in his body. Peter Parker is just a teenager who happens to be freakishly good at chemistry. The webbing was never a superpower. It's a machine he strapped to his wrists. That machine is called the web shooter, and it has to pull off two nearly impossible jobs at the very same time. First, it has to store a liquid safely under high pressure. Second, it has to fire that liquid so it becomes a solid rope in a fraction of a second. To understand how you'd build one, we split it into two problems: the magic goo and the machine that shoots it. Let's start with the goo. In the comics, the web fluid is a clear liquid kept in sealed cartridges under pressure. Its secret ingredient is a protein, the exact same kind that makes real spider silk. So to fake it, we first have to understand real spider silk. Spider silk is built from long chains of simple amino acids, mostly glycine and alanine. Inside each strand, those chains fold into microscopic stacked sheets. Those tightly packed sheets are what make the fiber so ridiculously strong. Gram for gram, spider silk is stronger than steel and tougher than Kevlar. A single strand can stretch far beyond its length before it ever snaps. Scaled up to rope thickness, a web really could stop a moving train. So the dream seems obvious. Just harvest a whole lot of spider silk. The problem is that spiders are cannibals and flatly refuse to be farmed. Pack thousands of spiders together, and you just end up with a few very full spiders. So scientists turn to a friendlier silk factory instead, the humble silkworm. Silkworms spin silk protein by the mile, and we've farmed them for thousands of years. Then in 2024, a lab at Tufts University finally cracked the web-slinging trick. They started by boiling silkworm cocoons to dissolve the silk into a watery solution. That gave them a beaker of liquid silk protein, the base of our web fluid. But plain liquid silk is weak and won't stick, so they upgraded the recipe. They stirred in dopamine, the same chemistry barnacles use to cement themselves to rock. That dopamine makes the finished fiber grab onto almost any surface. Then they added chitosan, the tough stuff from insect shells, for extra strength, and a splash of borate solution to push the stickiness even higher. Now we've got a jar of souped-up liquid silk, ready to become a thread. But here's the catch that stumped everyone for decades. A puddle of liquid can't fly across a room and hold your body weight. It has to turn into a solid fiber in the air, mid-flight. The trick is a clever piece of plumbing called a coaxial needle. It's simply a tiny tube nested inside a slightly bigger tube. The liquid silk shoots through the center, wrapped in a thin sleeve of acetone. The instant the silk meets that acetone, it's shocked into hardening. So the stream leaves as a liquid and arrives as a solid, sticky strand. The acetone just evaporates in the air, leaving pure silk stuck to the target. In the lab, that home-brewed fiber lifted objects 80 times its own weight. And they could tune the thread from thinner than a hair to about 0.5 millimeter. That right there is real-life web fluid. Now for the second half of the problem, the machine that fires it. This is where Peter Parker's engineering really shines. The web fluid lives in small sealed cartridges, each one held under pressure. He wears a whole bracelet of these cartridges around each wrist. Spare cartridges ride on his belt for lightning-fast reloads mid-swing. A narrow channel carries the fluid from the cartridge down to a nozzle in his palm. The trigger is a small button sitting right in the center of the palm, which is exactly why a casual handshake or high five never sets it off by accident. Tap it quickly twice, and out shoots a long, thin swing line. Hold the trigger down, and the same fluid comes out as a thick, heavy glob. Twist the wrist to change the nozzle, and the stream fans out into a wide net. The shape of that nozzle opening controls everything the web does. A fine pinhole spins a rope, a wide slot sprays a sheet, and the whole device runs on pressure alone. No motors, no wires, no battery. Think of it as a tiny, absurdly precise fire extinguisher loaded with silk. Inside, a one-way valve keeps air from sneaking back and clogging the line. Because the moment web fluid meets air for too long, it starts to set. That airtight sealing is actually the hardest part of the real machine. Keep it sealed and the fluid stays liquid. Let it leak and the nozzle gums up. After a big fight, the shooters have to be cleaned out and reloaded. It's less a magic wrist and more a demanding little high-pressure printer. So the big question, could you actually build one of these today? The honest answer is, surprisingly close. We already have the liquid silk, the stickiness, and the mid-air hardening. We can even aim it and fire a solid line clear across a room. But three big gaps still stand between us and real web slinging. The first is fuel. A wrist cartridge can't possibly hold thousands of swings. Real web fluid would run dry after just a few big jumps. The second gap is raw strength for a full-grown adult in motion. Catching a falling person needs a fiber a notch stronger than today's best lab thread. And the third, honestly, is the acetone. Smelly and flammable, not exactly wrist-friendly. There's also the plain physics of the swing itself. You need a high anchor, a strong line, and perfect timing on the release. Miss any one of those, and you're not swinging, you're just falling. But every single year, labs shrink these gaps a little further. Stronger synthetic silks, safer solvents, tinier high-pressure tanks. And the first real use probably won't be crime fighting at all. It's far more likely to be a rescue tool, a line fired to someone stuck out of reach. Which is a very Spider-Man thing to build first when you think about it. One last thing the comics got weirdly, wonderfully right. Peter's very first web fluid was mixed from cheap pharmacy chemicals for about $16. A broke teenager inventing a wonder material in his bedroom is oddly believable. And he designed it to dissolve within an hour, so the city never drowns in old webbing. That single detail quietly solves a huge real-world litter problem. Different versions of Spider-Man still argue over organic versus mechanical shooters, but the mechanical version is the one we can actually chase in a lab. Because it turns a superpower into an engineering problem. And engineering problems are exactly the kind humans eventually solve. So let's recap what it really takes. A jar of liquid silk protein, upgraded with barnacle glue and insect armor, a coaxial nozzle that hardens the thread in midair, and a pressurized wrist machine that fires it as a rope, a net, or a glob. Put those three together, and Spider-Man stops being fiction and becomes a prototype. Maybe not this year, and maybe not perfectly, but somewhere in a lab right now, the web shooter is quietly becoming real. And honestly, that might be the most amazing part of the whole story. That's how it's made. Now it's your turn. What should we build next? Drop it in the comments. The most liked idea becomes our next video. See you there.